Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. It was a rare show of solidarity. Dozens of Arab, Muslim, and regional leaders coming together to condemn Israel for its airstrikes on Doha last week. Qatar's emir said the attacks crossed a red line and warned that Prime Minister Netanyahu was trying to make the Arab world into an Israeli sphere of influence. Türkiye's President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan said that Israel would pay a heavy price, vowing a mix of both diplomatic and economic retaliation.
We must intensify our diplomatic efforts to expand the sanctions against Israel. Legal mechanisms must be employed to hold Israeli authorities accountable before justice. We all know that Israel will not stop in the short term unless it comes under a strong reaction and sanctions, further speeding up its occupation and destabilizing policies.
At the emergency summit in Doha, OIC, Arab League, and regional leaders issued a unanimous condemnation of Israel. Egypt's president had a direct warning to the people of Israel, saying the strikes on Doha were sabotaging existing peace agreements. The GCC, a collection of Gulf states, pledged to activate a joint defense mechanism in response to Israel's attacks. But as regional leaders gathered in a show of unity, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem, vowing Washington's continued full support. For his part, Netanyahu remained defiant, vowing to target Hamas wherever they are. On Tuesday, Israel launched its latest ground invasion of Gaza, where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are on the brink of starvation. For more, joining me now from Ankara is Kamil Aydin. He's a member of Turkish Parliament's Foreign Policy Committee. And from Cairo, former senior undersecretary at Egypt's Foreign Ministry, Ramzi Elzedin Ramzi. He was also former UN Assistant Secretary General and a former ambassador. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me now. A lot's happened over the past week, a very important summit in Doha, bringing together the OIC and members of the Arab League. Mr. Aydin, I want to begin with you. What's your key takeaways from this summit? Was it important that it happened, and was the participation important?
It is very important, actually, because, there happened a very outrageous and unacceptable assault on Doha. So this is something, very illegitimate and breaking all the national and international laws. So for the last 2 years, I think we have seen many examples of this kind of assault, not only in Gaza Strait, but all around the region. They started to attack illegally and unacceptably to Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and sometimes in Iraq, and the last one, which is not expected, to Qatar, because Qatar is the mediating country in order to create a kind of peace process and ceasefire in the region. And this is the will of all the international, institutions and the countries. But amazingly, honestly, ununderstandably, unimaginably, suddenly they attacked Qatar and killed many innocent people as well. So this is outrageous. And afterwards, of course, this was a very reasonable excuse for collecting all the regional leaders and the countries to show that they are in a great solidarity against any kind of crime and assault perpetrated by Israel.
Ramzi, you heard Mr. Aydin. He said it's time to take action. You watched the Arab League OIC summit. What was most important for you, and do you feel that action was taken?
Well, first of all, let me wholeheartedly associate myself with what Mr. Aydin has said, and therefore I will not repeat what he said. But as to what really caught my attention in the final communique are a number of things. First, I think the issue of calling for sanctions against Israel. I think that is extremely important. And the second point is suspending the Israel from the United Nations. And that maybe needs a little bit more clarification. But I think this is where the action should be heading. We are, in a few days, there will be a meeting at the General Assembly at the summit level, and it is supposed to follow up on the resolution adopted last week, which endorsed the declaration, as you know, that was adopted by the conference in July. It has a whole menu of possible actions to be taken against Israel in view of its flagrant violation of international law and complete disregard for human lives. So action needs to be done. And I think it is important at this point of time for the General Assembly to adopt or propose, because as you know, the General Assembly simply makes recommendations. It should recommend a series of actions to be taken against Israel. Should Israel, within a specific time frame, not comply, which I think is almost for granted because it's completely ignored the conference, then I think we should move to suspending, and I would be very specific, suspending the activities of Israel and the General Assembly. And there is a precedent. The General Assembly in 1974 suspended the activities of apartheid South Africa from its activities. And that in effect meant that South Africa was unable to attend any of the General Assembly and associated meetings with the General Assembly. And that was, of course, reversed, rescinded once the apartheid regime ended in South Africa. So there is a precedent. It does not need Security Council action, because at the Security Council, as you know, we will be faced with at least one veto, if not more. And therefore, this is a plausible and I think practical way to proceed. There will be consequences, of course, if the General Assembly proceeds in this direction. But I think it is necessary in view of what is Israel's conduct over the past almost 2 years. It has disregarded every principle of international law. It has flouted the Charter of the United Nations, and I think it is time to put an end to this. It can no longer be business as usual with Israel. That is over and done with. And I think it's very clear. And today, as you know, the independent commission appointed by the UN Human Rights Council made it very clear, adding to the many reports and statements made, that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. Both of you have served in multilateral organizations, and obviously when you're together with members from many different countries, the framework is international law to be able to carry out your duties, and that's always brought people together. But Mr. Aydin, you at the OSCE, Mr. Remzi, you at the UN, when you're dealing with someone who's not playing by the same rules, who's not respecting international law, how do you take action? What type of challenges does that create for you? Mr. Aydin, you first.
Yes, you are right, my dear friend. Just before giving a correct answer to your question, I would like to add to what my honorable friend Remzi has already mentioned, in the sense of, taking some solid actions against Israel's violations. I think apart from the sanctions you have already pointed out, my friend, I think as Türkiye has already done, all Arab League countries or Islamic countries, at least we can start somewhere, because the fire is in our region. So we are the first countries who are going to pay the heavy cost against this kind of violation in the region. I think we should take some concrete steps in addition to your recommendations. The other one is that we have already done for the last 1.5 years. We cut all economic relations, commercial relations with Israel. I think it should be done by the rest of other Arab League member countries and Islamic countries. And when I come to your point, yes, we are a part of the international law. We are a part of the international associations. For example, I am the head of CCT under the general umbrella of OSCPA. And honestly, in most of our meetings, especially in coordination with the United Nations Office of Countering Terrorism, we say yes, we should do something, and we should take all international decisions into account.
So, Mr. Remzi, I mean, you already gave some great recommendations in your previous answer, but again, you have a lawless actor on the other side. Does the UN have the instruments to be able to implement this? And how much could this discourage Israel from moving forward?
Well, it looks like nothing will discourage Israel, but I think we have to do what needs to be done to make sure that we try to protect the Palestinian people to the extent that we can, and to deter Israel also. So, like I said earlier, sanctions are an option, and there are precedents. There is South Africa. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, sanctions were imposed. So there are precedents. Of course, they will not be passed by the Security Council because the United States will use its veto right, but it can be recommended by the General Assembly, and it's for each individual member state to decide which sanctions it wishes to implement. But let me point out something that is very important, and I think Mr. Aydin referred to that. Now, we're facing an assault on international law. We're facing an assault on international order. And here I would like just to take a few steps back into history. What we are witnessing today, Israel's action in the region, is reminiscent of what Hitler did in Europe. What Hitler tried to do in Europe was to impose his vision for security in Europe by complete domination. He wanted to be the hegemon in. What Netanyahu is doing today is exactly the same. He is expanding his Lebensraum, his area of comfort, his zone of comfort, by invading, by trying to change governments, as he's tried to do with Iran. And this is something that I don't think the world is prepared to accept. It did not accept that in the Second World War, but that came at an extremely heavy price. I don't think we need to go that far. I think Israel should be stopped. And I already see some indications that the issue is we don't have the luxury of time. Public opinion is changing in the United States, it's changing in Europe, and it's even changing inside Israel. But that will take time to materialize and to be reflected into policies of the government. I see a disconnect between the public in Europe and the United States, an increasing gap, and the leadership. So I don't think the international community, which we're talking about more than 150 countries, or maybe even more, who will by next week be recognizing the state of Palestine, need to take action. They need to take action, and each country should, at its own comfort zone, take whatever it feels appropriate. Spain has taken very important, I think, decisions, and I think that is the minimum, which is basically to deprive Israel of continuing its aggressive military policy in the surrounding countries and beyond. I think that needs to be done. That's the absolute minimum, that Israel should not be allowed to continue with its aggression against its neighbors.
Mr. Aydin, I want to ask you, generally the GCC looks to the United States for its security, but here you have an event where obviously the U.S. knew about it, and they seem to have allowed it to happen. Many other Western countries, most likely the United Kingdom as well, knew about it. So if the GCC can't fully trust the U.S. or the U.K., does this mean there's a bigger role for Turkey to play from a security perspective? And how far will Turkey take this role? I mean, what happens if it comes head to head with Israel? Where is that line drawn?
I think we should be on the side of the peace, because there is no winner of war. This is very cliche expression of, the comparison between peace and war. So that's why Türkiye, not only in the war in Gaza, having the same position, Türkiye has always in favor of peace negotiations. That's what we have done in the war between Ukraine and Russia, and I think we have done very good things. For example, the grain deal is very outstanding example out of this initiative acts. The same purpose, I think, should be taken into account in this process, because America is the master key in this unfortunately crucial crisis, and Israel cannot behave, cannot act so violently, attacking all the neighboring countries and sort of acting a kind of genocidal things in the Gaza Strip. But America, Marco Rubio just a couple of days ago visited Jerusalem, and I think he openly said that we are supporting you in your struggle against Hamas, because this is an excuse, as if it is a kind of struggle against Hamas. No, it's a kind of genocidal act. I think they should accept, as Ramsey says, most of the European countries started to accept it, that this is a kind of not territorial sort of defense acts. It's a kind of brutal, genocidal sort of sweeping of the country and innocent people. And they don't take any rule into account. And they killed UN officials, doctors, and all civilians, mainly children. Can you imagine more than 64,000 people killed? And honestly, most of them are children and innocent civilians, women's, homeless people. They are trying to look a kind of shelter to resort into, but on the open area, it's a kind of open target for Israel bombardment. So in that sense, I think we should come together and we try to push the United States of America first and the other members of the European Security Council. Please, I think we should stop it. Otherwise, it's gonna turn to be a kind of worldly issue, a kind of sort of global issue. Then nobody can benefit out of it. And in that sense, I think, in addition to what Ramsey says, yes, sanctions are acceptable. It should be very apparent. And on the other hand, I think we should isolate Israel on those who are on the side of the peace and ceasefire. We should isolate Israel from any kind of organizations, activities, associations, institutions. And the second one, I think we should stop any kind of relationship with Israel, from economic to trade and defense sort of activities. The third one, this is very crucial. I think, on the other hand, while doing this kind of fulfilling this kind of sanctions, I think on the other hand, we should try to increase the number of the countries who recognize Palestine. And as my friend has already mentioned, that Spain ignited first, then Ireland, Great Britain, France, Portugal, so on and so forth. Most of the European countries are saying enough is enough. Now we are getting ready to accept in the September UN General Assembly meetings. So I think we should be very keen on this side of the other solution for the problem of the region. And if we can manage to make Palestine recognized more by the Western countries, I think this is going to help again to stop the violations by Israel. That's what I am thinking.
Now, Egypt is the other major military power in the region. Mr. Remzi, you've served in very high diplomatic positions inside of the foreign policy apparatus of Egypt. Do you feel that the Egyptians need to take a bigger role, or is that expected from them going forward? And also a separate side question, if you can also answer it, many countries expected to recognize Palestine at the UNGA. What type of legal advantages will that bring outside of the symbolic gesture of recognizing Palestine as a sovereign state?
Well, as you know, Egypt has been in the vanguard of all peace efforts for a number of decades. And our policy has been consistent. We want peace and stability in the region. And we are prepared to take action in this regard. Now, what we are facing today is Israel, or the Israeli government, because there is a difference between the present Israeli government and the population, is trying to foist on the region its vision for regional security, which basically is Israeli hegemony. And that has to be resisted. Resisted for the sake of peace, sustained peace, and security. Now, what needs to be done, in my view, is that we have to, countries of the region, which are the Arab countries, Turkey and Iran, and certainly Israel down the road, but it has to change its policies first, is to present the world, and particularly the United States, because the United States remains the ultimate security guarantor in the region, presented with our own vision of regional security. Now, it is a vision that Israel, at some point of time, when it reverses its policy, would be most welcome to. But it has to be built on certain principles. And these principles are enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, and foremost among them is to eschew the use of force in conducting international relations, is to evacuate the territories it occupies, and a whole host of other principles. And I think that is what needs to be done. And I think Egypt is prepared to move in that direction. Just 2 days ago, the Arab Council at ministerial level took a decision, and for the first time, and I think that is worth mentioning in this regard, is that it was a decision proposed by both Saudi Arabia and Egypt, outlining the principles upon which a regional security system should be established. And I think it needs a lot of work to be done, a lot of flesh to be put on the bones, but I think it's an important step that the Arabs have moved in that direction, and I think Turkey and Iran at some point would have to join, and certainly Israel at a certain point of time. I think Israel can join any time if it reverses its policy. I think that is very important. And there will be consequences for that recognition at the diplomatic level and at the political level. And every country, of course, as you know, conducts its foreign policy according to its national interests. But the fact that we will have most likely 160 countries or a little bit more, well, just to remind you, 164 countries recognize Israel, and we will have almost the same recognizing the state of Palestine. And I think that the symbolism is extremely important. Now, in terms of practical actions, I think there will be actions taken by individual countries to ensure that there is practical content to the recognition that they will accord Palestine in the next, hopefully, week or so.
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, I greatly enjoyed the conversation, but we're out of time. Mr. Kamil Aydin, Mr. Remzi El-Zedin. Remzi, thank you for joining me and sharing your thoughts. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.